when I discovered that my son-in-law had been stealing rare books and collectibles from my beloved library. I was heartbroken. How could the man I had welcomed into my family betray my trust and the community I had served for so many years? But as a retired librarian, I knew the power of knowledge and the importance of preserving history. I wouldn't let him get away with this theft. With the help of my sharp mind and a few unexpected allies, I set out to uncover the truth and bring the stolen treasures back where they belonged. But the path to justice was more treacherous than I ever imagined, and the secrets I uncovered would shake my family to its very core. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The musty scent of old books and the soft whisper of turning pages had always been a comfort to me. As a librarian for over 4 decades, I had found solace and purpose within the walls of the Grand Oak Library. Even in retirement, I couldn't stay away, often volunteering my time to organize special collections and assist patrons with their research. It was during one of these volunteer shifts that I first noticed something amiss. I was cataloging a recent donation of rare 18th century manuscripts when I realized that several of the most valuable pieces were missing. Confused and concerned, I brought the matter to the attention of the current head librarian, Emily. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding," Emily reassured me, her eyes already darting back to her computer screen. "Perhaps they were misfiled or sent out for restoration." But as I searched the library's records and spoke with other staff members, I couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play. It wasn't like Emily to be so dismissive, and the missing items were far too significant to have simply been misplaced. My suspicions only grew when I overheard a conversation between Emily and my son-in-law, David. They were whispering in the reference section, their voices low and urgent. I strained to hear what they were saying, but I could only catch snippets of their conversation. "Can't keep doing this." Emily's voice was tight with anxiety. "Just a few more pieces." David's tone was insistent, almost threatening. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the implications of what I had heard. Could David, the man who had married my beloved daughter, be involved in the disappearance of the library's treasures? I spent the next few days gathering evidence, meticulously documenting every missing item and tracing the trail of deceit that led straight to David's door. I pored over financial records and email correspondence, piecing together the scope of his betrayal. As much as it pained me to admit it, I couldn't help but marvel at the intricacy of David's scheme. He had been patient, methodical, and utterly ruthless in his pursuit of the library's treasures. And with Emily's help, whether given willingly or under duress, he had managed to operate undetected for months, if not years. But even as I uncovered the depths of his deception, I knew that confronting him directly would be a dangerous gamble. David was not a man to be trifled with, and I feared that he would stop at nothing to protect his ill-gotten gains. I needed allies, people I could trust to stand with me against the storm that was sure to come. And so, with a heavy heart, I turned to the one person who I knew would always have my back, my daughter, Lily. Lily had always been a force of nature, fiercely intelligent and unwaveringly loyal. When I told her of David's betrayal, her eyes flashed with a fury that mirrored my own. "I can't believe he would do this to you, to our family," she said, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. "He always seemed so supportive of your work at the library, so proud of your legacy." I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "I thought so too, Lily, but it seems that his pride was just a mask for his own greed and ambition." Together, Lily and I began to formulate a plan. We knew that we couldn't take on David alone, not with his web of influence and intimidation. We needed to build a case so airtight that even he couldn't wriggle out of it. Our first step was to reach out to the authorities, to report the theft and present the evidence we had gathered. But as we sat in the detective's office, watching him flip through the files with a skeptical eye, I felt a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hawthorne," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "While your evidence is compelling, it's all circumstantial at this point. Without a smoking gun, without proof of Mr. Thompson's direct involvement, there's not much we can do." I felt Lily's hand tighten around mine, her frustration and disappointment palpable. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm me, I felt a flicker of determination reignite in my chest. If the authorities couldn't help us, then we would have to take matters into our own hands. We would have to find the smoking gun ourselves. Over the next few weeks, Lily and I threw ourselves into our investigation with a renewed sense of purpose. We tracked down leads and interviewed witnesses, piecing together a map of David's network of buyers and sellers. And then, just when we thought we had hit a dead end, we caught a break. A former employee of David's, a young man named Alex, reached out to us with a story that made my blood run cold. "He's been using a storage unit," Alex told us, his voice shaking with fear and regret. "That's where he keeps the stolen items until he can move them. I've seen it myself. Boxes and boxes of rare books and manuscripts, hidden away like some kind of twisted treasure trove." Lily and I exchanged a glance, our hearts racing with the thrill of discovery. This was it, the smoking gun we had been searching for. With Alex's help, we could finally prove David's guilt and bring him to justice. But even as we made our plans to confront David and recover the stolen goods, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap. David was too smart, too ruthless, to leave such a glaring vulnerability in his operation. As Lily and I drove to the storage facility, following the directions Alex had given us, I felt a sense of unease settle over me like a shroud. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. And then, as we turned the corner and caught sight of the storage unit, its metal door slightly ajar, I felt my heart stop in my chest. There, standing in the shadows, a gun glinting in his hand and a smile on his face, was David. And beside him, her eyes wide with fear and confusion, was Emily. "Hello, Marcus," David said, his voice dripping with malice. "I've been expecting you." My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at David, his gun trained on Lily and me. Emily stood beside him, her face pale and her eyes wide with terror. "David," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger, "what have you done?" He laughed, a cold, mirthless sound that sent shivers down my spine. "What have I done? I've taken what's rightfully mine, Marcus, what I deserve after years of being overlooked and undervalued." I shook my head in disbelief, my mind reeling with the realization of just how far David had fallen. "Those books, those manuscripts, they don't belong to you. They belong to the library, to the community. How could you betray everything I've worked for, everything our family stands for?" David's eyes flashed with a manic intensity, his grip on the gun tightening. Family? You want to talk about family? You've never treated me like family, Marcus. You've always looked down on me, always seen me as an outsider. Well, now I'm taking what's mine, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. I felt Lily's hand slip into mine, her fingers trembling but her grip strong. David, she said, her voice calm and steady, this isn't you. This isn't the man I married, the man I love. Please, let's just talk about this. Let's find a way to make it right. For a moment, I saw a flicker of hesitation cross David's face, a glimmer of the man he had once been. But then his eyes hardened, and he shook his head. It's too late for that, Lily. I've come too far to turn back now. He gestured with the gun, motioning for us to move toward the storage unit. Inside, both of you, and don't try anything stupid. I won't hesitate to use this if I have to. As we stepped into the shadows of the storage unit, the musty scent of old books and the metallic tang of fear filling my nostrils, I felt a wave of despair wash over me. How had it come to this? How had my own family, my own flesh and blood, become the very thing I had fought against for so long? But even as the darkness closed in around us, I felt a flicker of hope reignite in my chest. Because there, hidden behind a stack of boxes, I caught a glimpse of something that made my heart skip a beat. It was a security camera, its red light blinking steadily in the gloom. And in that moment, I knew that we had a chance, that the truth would come to light no matter what David did to us. I caught Lily's eye, and I saw the same realization dawn on her face. We had to keep David talking, had to buy ourselves time until help could arrive. Why, David? I asked, my voice soft but steady. Why go to such lengths? Why risk everything for a few rare books? He laughed again, the sound harsh and grating in the confined space. A few rare books? You have no idea what you're talking about, Marcus. These aren't just books. They're history, they're power, and with them, I can finally make something of myself, finally be someone that people respect and admire. I shook my head, my heart breaking for the man I had once called family. Respect and admiration can't be bought, David. They have to be earned through hard work and integrity, through the kind of dedication and service that the library represents. David's face twisted with anger, his finger tightening on the trigger. Spare me your lectures, Marcus. You've always thought you were better than me, always looked down on me from your ivory tower. Well, look at you now. Look at where your precious principles have gotten you. But before he could say another word, the sound of sirens cut through the air, the blue and red lights of police cars casting an eerie glow over the storage facility. David's eyes widened with fear and disbelief, his gun wavering in his hand. No, he whispered, his voice hoarse with desperation. No, this can't be happening. But it was happening. The police had arrived, alerted by the security camera and the silent alarm that Lily had triggered when we first entered the storage unit. They swarmed the facility, their weapons drawn and their voices ringing out with authority. David Thompson, drop your weapon and come out with your hands up. For a moment, David seemed to waver, his eyes darting from the gun to the police to Lily and me. But then, with a roar of anger and despair, he turned the gun on himself, the barrel pressing against his temple. No! Lily screamed, lunging forward to stop him. But it was too late. The sound of the gunshot was deafening in the confined space, and I felt my world shatter into a million pieces as I watched David crumple to the ground, his blood pooling on the concrete floor. In the chaos that followed, as the police rushed in and the paramedics arrived, I could only stand there, my heart numb with shock and grief. I had won, in a sense. The stolen books had been recovered, and the truth had come to light. But at what cost? My own family, torn apart by greed and deception. My own heart, broken by the betrayal of those I had loved and trusted. As I watched Lily weep over David's body, her tears mingling with his blood, I knew that nothing would ever be the same, that the scars of this moment would stay with us forever, a reminder of the price we had paid for justice. But even in the depths of my despair, I felt a flicker of hope reignite in my chest, because I knew that the library, my beloved library, would endure, that the stories and the history and the knowledge contained within its walls would continue to inspire and enlighten generations to come, and that, in the end, was the only legacy that truly mattered. The weeks that followed David's death were a blur of grief and confusion. I watched as Lily tried to pick up the pieces of her shattered life, her eyes haunted by the memory of what had transpired in that storage unit. I tried my best to be there for her, to offer what comfort and support I could. But the truth was, I was struggling too. The betrayal of my son-in-law, the man I had welcomed into my family and trusted with my legacy, had cut me to the core. I found myself spending more and more time at the library, losing myself in the stacks and the quiet solitude of the reading rooms. It was there, among the books and the history, that I began to find a measure of peace, a sense of purpose that had been lost in the chaos of recent events. I threw myself into the work of rebuilding, of restoring the collection that David had so callously plundered. It was a daunting task, but one that I embraced with a fierce determination. I reached out to collectors and dealers, using my connections and my knowledge to track down the missing pieces. I spent long hours poring over catalogs and auction listings, my eyes straining in the dim light of my study. And slowly, piece by piece, the collection began to take shape once more. The rare manuscripts and first editions, the maps and the artwork, all of it returning to its rightful place on the library's shelves. But even as I worked to restore what had been lost, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing, that the wounds inflicted by David's betrayal ran deeper than any physical loss. It was Lily who finally helped me to see the truth. She came to me one evening, her eyes red from crying, but her voice steady with resolve. "Dad," she said, taking my hand in hers, "I need to tell you something, something that I've been struggling with for a long time." I nodded, my heart aching for the pain I saw in her eyes. "Of course, sweetheart. You can tell me anything." She took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the flickering flames of the fireplace. "I knew about David's scheme," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I knew what he was doing, and I didn't stop him." I felt my world tilt on its axis, my breath catching in my throat. "What? Lily, how could you—" She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I was afraid, Dad, afraid of losing him, afraid of what he might do if I confronted him. He had become so different, so cold and calculating. I didn't recognize the man I had married." I felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over me, mingling with the grief and confusion that had become my constant companions. But as I looked into Lily's eyes, I saw something else there too, something that made my heart ache with a bittersweet understanding. "You loved him?" I said softly, my hand tightening around hers. "Despite everything, you loved him?" She nodded, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I did. And I think, in his own twisted way, he loved me too. But he loved power more. He loved the thrill of the con, the rush of getting away with something forbidden. I sat in silence for a long moment, my mind reeling with the implications of Lily's confession. But even as the betrayal cut deep, I felt a flicker of compassion reignite in my chest. "Lily," I said, my voice soft but firm, "what David did was wrong. What he put us through, what he put the library through, it was unforgivable. But your love for him, your hope that he could be better, that's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to be proud of." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with surprise and a tentative hope. "You don't hate me? For keeping his secret? For not stopping him?" I shook my head, a sad smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. "No, sweetheart. I could never hate you. You're my daughter, my flesh and blood. And I know that you did what you thought was right, even if it turned out to be wrong." She fell into my arms then, her tears soaking into the fabric of my shirt. And as I held her close, stroking her hair and murmuring words of comfort, I felt something shift inside me, a sense of clarity, of purpose that had been missing for so long. I knew then that the true restoration, the true healing, would not come from recovered books or repaired shelves. It would come from the love and the forgiveness that we found in each other, from the strength and the resilience that had always been the heart of our family. And so, in the weeks and months that followed, Lily and I worked to rebuild not just the library, but our relationship too. We talked openly and honestly about the pain and the betrayal, about the hopes and the dreams that had been shattered by David's actions. We leaned on each other for support, for comfort, for the simple joy of shared laughter and tears. And slowly, day by day, we began to heal, to find a new sense of purpose and meaning in the wake of the storm. The library, too, began to thrive once more. The community rallied around us, donating time and resources to help restore what had been lost. And as the shelves filled up and the reading rooms bustled with activity, I felt a sense of pride and gratitude swell in my chest. Because this was more than just a building, more than just a collection of books and artifacts. This was a living, breathing testament to the power of knowledge, to the resilience of the human spirit. And as I watched Lily move through the stacks, her head held high and her eyes bright with purpose, I knew that we had won. Not just against David and his scheme, but against the darkness and the despair that had threatened to consume us. We were the Hawthorns, a family forged in the fire of adversity and tempered by the strength of our love. And together, there was nothing we could not overcome. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from